The afternoon sun beat down on the asphalt of Los Angeles, a city known for its social contrasts as stark as its Hollywood hills. In Beverly Hills, one of the city's most affluent neighborhoods, Ethan Hayes parked his Porsche Cayenne in the exclusive spot of the imposing office building that housed the headquarters of his hotel empire, Hayes Grand Hotels. At 45, Ethan was the picture of success to any outsider. Meticulously trimmed graying hair, a bespoke Italian suit, and a Swiss watch that cost more than the annual salary of many of his employees. Finishing a call as he stepped into his private elevator, Ethan didn't acknowledge the operator who greeted him with a respectful, "Good afternoon, Mr. Hayes." To him, people like that employee were just anonymous cogs in the machine he had built over 2 decades of relentless work and absolute dedication to business. "Cancel everything if we don't close the deal by 5. I don't care if they need time to think. Thinkers lose. It's now or never," he snapped into his phone before striding into his penthouse office. The meeting with foreign investors interested in financing his hotel chain's expansion into the East Coast lasted over 3 hours. Ethan was ruthless in his negotiations, not yielding a single inch. In the end, he got exactly what he wanted: more capital to expand his empire, with less equity for the investors than they had initially hoped for. "It was a pleasure doing business with you, gentlemen," he said with a calculated smile as they signed the contracts. There was no real satisfaction in his voice, only the coldness of someone who had just won another round in the only game that truly mattered, accumulating power and fortune. As the investors left with his assistant, Ethan remained in the boardroom, contemplating the panoramic view of Los Angeles. Below, the city sprawled out like a game board where he moved the pieces at will. He had started from nothing, the son of middle-class merchants who sacrificed everything to give him an education. Now he owned one of the largest independent hotel chains in the country, with properties in 6 states. His divorce 3 years earlier hadn't fazed him. His ex-wife, Catherine, tired of competing with his obsession for work, had left with half of his fortune, but not a single piece of his heart. Ethan had no children. He'd never had the time or patience for them. He had no regrets. Children would have been mere distractions on his journey to the top. "Sarah, cancel my evening appointments. I'm going straight home," he informed his assistant over the intercom. Heading down to the garage, Ethan checked the notifications on his phone. The stock market had reacted well to the announcement of his chain's expansion. The company's shares had climbed 3.5% that afternoon alone. Another reason to celebrate alone in his triplex penthouse in Bel Air with a glass of 18-year-old single malt scotch. The Porsche purred to life as he turned the key. Ethan felt invincible behind the wheel of the German machine that had cost over $200,000. He sped down Wilshire Boulevard, weaving through slower cars as if they were mere obstacles in his path. Stopped at a red light on Sunset Boulevard, Ethan turned up the volume of the finance podcast he was listening to. That's when he noticed a light tap on the passenger side window. Irritated by the interruption, he glanced over and saw a little girl, no older than 8, holding a small bouquet of daisies. She was dressed simply, a faded t-shirt, denim shorts, and flip-flops. With a sigh of annoyance, Ethan partially lowered the power window. "What do you want?" he asked curtly. "Flowers, mister? It's just $5 for the bunch," the girl replied with a shy but determined smile. "They're fresh. I picked them this morning." Ethan glanced at the simple bouquet. The daisies were slightly wilted under the scorching LA sun. The girl had large, expressive, deep brown eyes and curly hair tied into 2 uneven pigtails. Her small hands held the flowers as if they were a precious treasure. "Get out of here, kid. I'm not wasting my money on your withered flowers." "You should be in school instead of bothering busy people," Ethan said sharply, already starting to close the window. But before the glass fully ascended, the girl's clear voice stopped him. "You're right, I should be in school. But my mom cleans rooms for important people like you, and she still doesn't make enough. These flowers aren't withered, mister. They're just tired, like my mom when she gets home. But they're still beautiful, and they can still make someone's day." Something in the sincerity of those words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He stared at the girl for a few seconds, unable to respond. His eyes met hers, eyes without judgment, only a wisdom that seemed impossible for someone so young. The light turned green. Cars behind him started honking. Ethan, still stunned, pulled out a $50 bill and held it out the window. "Here, keep the change," he said, almost in a whisper. The girl smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. "Thank you, mister. But the flowers are only $5. I can't take so much money without giving you the right change." Ethan was even more taken aback by the child's honesty. Before he could insist, she placed the bouquet of daisies in the car, took only a $5 bill from his hand and returned the rest. "What's your name?" Ethan asked, surprising himself with the sudden interest. "Juliana, sir. But everyone calls me Jules." The honking grew more insistent. Ethan accelerated, leaving little Juliana behind, but taking with him something he couldn't define. A restlessness, an unanswered question. The daisies on the passenger seat seemed to look at him, silent witnesses to a moment that, unbeknownst to him yet, would mark a turning point in his life. That night, in his luxurious penthouse, Ethan couldn't sleep. The girl's words echoed in his mind. "They're just tired like my mom when she gets home." How many mothers like Juliana's worked in his hotels? How many children were selling flowers at intersections while he was signing multi-million-dollar contracts? For the first time in many years, Ethan Hayes felt something other than the ambition that had always driven him. He felt shame. Ethan woke the next morning with a sense of unease he hadn't felt in years. The daisies Juliana had sold him were in a glass of water on his nightstand. He didn't even remember putting them there. The flowers, which had seemed wilted the day before, had revived overnight and now displayed their white petals fully open. Sitting on the edge of his bed, he stared at those simple flowers for a few minutes. In his room, decorated with designer furniture and expensive works of art, that $5 bouquet seemed out of place. But there was an authenticity to those daisies that all the sophisticated decor around them couldn't replicate. In his imported shower with 6 different jet settings, Ethan couldn't get Juliana's face out of his head, or her words about her mother who cleaned rooms for important people. As he dressed, choosing from dozens of perfectly aligned Italian suits in his walk-in closet, an idea began to form. "Sarah, I need you to do something different today," he told his assistant as soon as he arrived at the office. "I want a complete list of all the female employees on the housekeeping staff at our 3 hotels here in Los Angeles, especially those who work the night shift." "Is there a problem with the housekeeping team, Mr. Hayes?" Sarah asked, surprised by the unusual request. No problem, just a routine check," he replied, looking away. Throughout the morning, Ethan tried to focus on his meetings and conference calls, but his mind kept drifting back to the girl at the traffic light. Around noon, Sarah entered his office with a folder. "Here is the list you asked for, sir. There are 47 employees in total, across 3 shifts at the 3 hotels. 17 of them work the night shift, between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Ethan nodded his thanks and, once alone, opened the folder. He carefully examined each file, looking for anything that could connect one of those women to little Juliana. On the 3rd page, a name caught his eye: Maria Garcia, 38 years old. Single mother with an 8-year-old daughter. Had been working for 3 years at the Hayes Beverly Hills, the most luxurious hotel in the chain, on the night shift. A chill ran down his spine. It could be a coincidence, but something told him he had found Juliana's mother. He continued reading the file. Maria lived in Boyle Heights, a working-class neighborhood miles away from the glamour of the hotel. She earned just over minimum wage, plus a small night differential. Ethan did a quick calculation. After taxes and bus fare, how much was left for Maria to support herself and a school-aged child? The number he came up with made his throat tighten. He picked up the phone and called the manager of the Beverly Hills Hotel. "Almeida, I need some information about a housekeeping employee, Maria Garcia. And I want absolute discretion on this." The manager, surprised by the owner's interest in a simple housekeeper, confirmed that Maria was one of their best employees, never missed a day, always punctual, and often worked extra hours when a colleague couldn't make it. "And do you know anything about her daughter?" Ethan asked, trying to sound casual. "Juliana? Yes, a lovely girl. Sometimes Maria has to bring her in when she has no one to watch her, especially during school breaks. The little one sits quietly in the staff room, drawing or reading. Extremely polite for her age." Ethan thanked him and hung up. He felt a confusing mix of emotions. On one hand, confirmation that he had found the right family. On the other, The realization that a child had to spend nights in a hotel staff room because her mother had no other options. And all of this was happening right under his nose, without him ever noticing or caring. He cancelled his afternoon appointments and drove to Boyle Heights. He parked his Porsche at the edge of the neighborhood, attracting curious stares. He realized he had never set foot in a place like this before. The sense of displacement was immense as he walked up the narrow streets, following the address he had jotted down. The modest houses, built close together, formed a vibrant labyrinth of life. Children ran and played on the sidewalks, music blared from open windows, the smell of home-cooked food filled the air. There was a joy and a sense of community that contrasted sharply with the solitude of his triplex penthouse. When he finally found Maria's house, he stopped in front, unsure of what to do next. It was a simple two-room stucco house with a small porch where laundry was drying in the sun. The door was slightly ajar, and Ethan could hear a child's voice humming inside. He took a deep breath and knocked. The humming stopped, and light footsteps approached. The door opened fully, revealing Juliana. She was wearing the same denim shorts as the day before, but with a different, equally faded t-shirt. Her eyes widened in recognition. "It's the man with the nice car," she exclaimed, a smile lighting up her face. "Did you come for more flowers?" "I haven't picked today's yet." Ethan felt his throat tighten. How could he explain his presence? He wasn't even sure himself. "Actually, I came to speak with your mother," he managed to say. Juliana's smile instantly vanished, replaced by a look of concern. "Mom's sleeping now. She works at night and only sleeps during the day. I can't wake her up." Ethan felt even worse. Of course Maria would be sleeping, preparing for another exhausting night of work. No, don't wake her," he said quickly. "I'll come back another time." Juliana studied him with shrewd eyes, far more mature than her age suggested. "You're the owner of the hotel, right? I've seen your picture on the employee board when I go there with my mom. Why did you come here?" Her directness caught him off guard. How could he explain something he didn't fully understand himself? "I came to thank you for the flowers. They looked very beautiful after I put them in water." Juliana smiled again, but her eyes retained that penetrating intelligence that unnerved him. "I'm glad you liked them. Flowers always look prettier when you take good care of them. My mom says it's the same with people." Ethan nodded, feeling increasingly uncomfortable under the gaze of this child who seemed to see right through his facade. "Are you not in school today?" he asked, changing the subject. "It's Saturday, mister," Juliana replied with a giggle. "But I go every day of the week. I'm in 3rd grade and I'm at the top of my class. My teacher says I'm very smart." The pride in her voice was palpable. Ethan smiled, genuinely impressed. "And you like to study?" "I love it," Juliana answered, her eyes shining. "I want to be a doctor when I grow up. Then I can take care of my mom, and she won't have to work at night anymore." The simplicity and nobility of that childhood dream hit Ethan like an avalanche. While he accumulated millions just for the pleasure of watching the numbers grow in his bank account, this child dreamed of studying so she could give her mother a better life. "I'm sure you'll be an excellent doctor," he said, with a sincerity that surprised him. At that moment, a sleepy voice called from inside the house. "Jules." "Who are you talking to, honey?" Ethan froze. He wasn't ready to face Maria. What would he say to her? That he came to see how his most humble employees lived? That a child's words had made him question his entire existence. "I should go," he said hastily, taking a step back. "Please don't tell your mother I was here. I'll come back another day." Before Juliana could answer, Ethan quickly walked back down the street, feeling like an intruder. His Porsche, parked at the edge of the neighborhood, now seemed like an obscene symbol of inequality. All the way back home, Ethan couldn't get the image of the small house and the girl who dreamed of being a doctor out of his head. On Monday, Ethan arrived at the office earlier than usual. He had spent the entire Sunday at home, restless, unable to find pleasure in the activities that normally distracted him. He tried to watch a movie in his private home theater, but gave up after 20 minutes. He opened an expensive bottle of wine, but the taste seemed bland. Even the panoramic view of Los Angeles, which used to fill his chest with pride, now seemed to silently accuse him. "Sarah, I need you to schedule a surprise visit to the Beverly Hills Hotel for tonight," he told his assistant as soon as she arrived. Don't inform anyone, not even the manager. I'll be there around 11 p.m. You never do surprise night visits to the hotels. Sir? Sarah commented, raising her eyebrows. Well, so I'm starting now, he replied curtly, ending the conversation. During the day, Ethan struggled to concentrate. In meetings, he found his mind wandering, losing track of the discussions. His executives exchanged worried glances. They had never seen their boss so distracted. At 11 p.m. sharp, Ethan entered through the back door of the Hayes Beverly Hills, wearing simple clothes instead of his usual suit. He wanted to observe the hotel's operations without being immediately recognized. Most of the night shift employees had never seen him in person. He walked through the silent corridors, observing the hotel's details with new eyes. The luxurious suites with nightly rates in the thousands of dollars were cleaned and prepared by people who earned less in a month than a guest spent in a single night. Finally, he saw a housekeeper pushing a cart with cleaning supplies. She was a woman of medium height, with curly hair tied in a bun, wearing the navy blue uniform with the Hayes Hotel's logo. She looked exhausted but worked methodically, checking every detail of the rooms. Ethan approached quietly. "Good evening," he said, causing the woman to turn around, startled. "Good evening, sir." "Can I help you?" she replied politely. Up close, Ethan could see the resemblance to Juliana. The same expressive eyes, the same determined chin. It was Maria, without a doubt. "I'm Ethan Hayes," he introduced himself, watching the surprise in the housekeeper's eyes. "I'm doing a surprise inspection." Maria immediately straightened up, nervous. "Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you. Is everything in order with the rooms? Did I do something wrong?" The apprehension in her voice made Ethan feel even worse. This woman was afraid of losing a job that barely paid her bills. "No, you haven't done anything wrong. On the contrary, I've heard excellent things about your work," he quickly reassured her. "Actually, I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes, if possible." Maria looked confused but nodded. "Of course, sir, but I need to finish these rooms by midnight." "Don't worry about that," Ethan interrupted. "Let's have a coffee in the restaurant. The rooms can wait." They went down to the hotel restaurant, empty at that hour. Ethan ordered coffee for both of them, and noticing Maria's discomfort at being invited by the hotel owner, tried to start a casual conversation. "How long have you been working for us, Maria?" 3 years and 4 months, Mr. Hayes," she answered promptly, her hands fidgeting around the coffee cup. "And do you like the work?" The question surprised her. No one had ever asked her that. "Yes, sir. It's a good job. The housekeepers at Hayes Hotels are respected. It's not like other places." She hesitated, then added, "Of course, the hours are tough, but I understand someone has to do the cleaning at night." Ethan nodded, reading between the lines what she didn't say, that she worked the night shift because it probably paid a little more. "You have a daughter, don't you?" "Juliana, if I'm not mistaken." Maria couldn't hide her surprise. How would the owner of a hotel chain know her daughter's name? "Yes, Juliana. She's 8, she replied cautiously. "How do you know that, sir?" Ethan hesitated. He couldn't just say he had gone to her house or bought flowers from her daughter. "We were reviewing employee files recently. For a new benefits program we're considering," he improvised. "It must be hard raising a child alone working nights." Maria's face tightened slightly. There was a hint of suspicion in her eyes now. "We manage, sir. Jules is a very responsible girl for her age." "I'm sure she is," Ethan replied, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. "And she's in school, right?" "Yes, she studies in the morning." "She's top of her class," Maria said, a brief smile of pride lighting up her tired face. "She wants to be a doctor, you know. I always tell her she can be whatever she wants, as long as she studies hard." Ethan felt a lump in his throat, remembering Juliana's words about becoming a doctor to take care of her mother. "And when you work at night, who does she stay with?" The question was too personal, and Maria hesitated before answering. "Our neighbor, Mrs. Diaz, watches her until I get back in the morning. On weekends and holidays when I can't find anyone. Well, sometimes I have to bring her with me." "I know it's not allowed, but—" "Don't worry about that," Ethan interrupted. "In fact, we're thinking of creating a space for the children of our night shift employees right here in the hotel. A safe place where they can sleep or study while their parents work." The words came out of his mouth before he could think. The idea had just occurred to him, but saying it aloud, he realized it made perfect sense. Maria's eyes widened. That would be wonderful, Mr. Hayes. Many of us struggle with childcare during the night shift. The conversation continued for a few more minutes. Ethan asked more questions about the working conditions, the salary, the difficulties Maria faced. Each answer was like a mirror being held up to him, reflecting a reality that had always been there, but that he had chosen to ignore. When they said goodbye, Ethan felt strangely light, yet burdened with a responsibility he had never acknowledged before. "Thank you for the coffee. Mr. Hayes," Maria said, still confused by the attention. "I need to get back to the rooms now." "Of course." "And Maria," Ethan paused, then continued, "you have an incredible daughter. You must be very proud of her." The housekeeper's face lit up genuinely for the first time during their entire conversation. "She's the treasure of my life, sir. Everything I do for her." As Maria walked away, returning to her work, Ethan remained seated for a long time. Her words echoed in his mind, "Everything I do for her." And him? Who or what was he working so hard for? What was the purpose of all his wealth, if it meant nothing more than numbers in a bank account? Driving back home that night, Ethan made a decision. The next morning, he called Sarah into his office as soon as he arrived. "I want you to schedule a meeting with the entire Human Resources Department and the board for tomorrow, and prepare a full report on the salaries and benefits of employees at all levels, especially the entry-level ones. I want to know how much we're paying our cleaning, maintenance, and kitchen staff, everyone." Sarah stared at him, clearly surprised. "May I ask the reason for this sudden interest, Mr. Hayes?" Ethan looked out his office window, at the city stretching below. "Let's just say someone made me realize that our flowers are tired, Sarah, and it's time we started taking better care of them." The assistant left the room confused, while Ethan picked up the phone and dialed the number of the director of the best private school in Los Angeles. He had another important matter to attend to. The news of the extraordinary meeting called by Ethan Hayes spread like wildfire through the company's headquarters. Executives speculated on the reason. Some feared layoffs, others bet on a major acquisition. No one, however, could have predicted what was to come. The next morning, the penthouse boardroom was packed. All directors, managers, and HR staff waited apprehensively. Ethan entered punctually at 9 a.m., carrying a folder himself instead of having his assistant do it. The room fell silent. "Good morning, everyone," he began without his usual pleasantries. "Last night, I visited the Beverly Hills Hotel, not as the owner but as an observer, and what I saw made me question a lot of things about how we run this company." The executives exchanged confused glances. This was not the Ethan Hayes they knew, the man obsessed with profits and expansion. "I've received the reports on our payroll," he continued, opening the folder. "I discovered that we have employees working night shifts, away from their families, for a salary that barely covers their basic needs. Meanwhile, our presidential suites are rented for amounts that these same people would take months to earn." The chief financial officer, Ricardo Vasconcelos, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Ethan, if I may, our salaries are aligned with the market. In fact, we pay 5% above the industry average." "And is that enough?" Ethan interrupted, with an intensity that surprised everyone. 5% above a number that is already insufficient. How many of you have tried to live on a minimum wage salary in Los Angeles? Silence was the only answer. No one in that room had ever faced such a situation. "Starting today, we are implementing changes," Ethan announced, distributing documents he had prepared overnight. "First, an immediate 30% raise for all employees earning up to 3 times the minimum wage. Second, the creation of a scholarship program for employees' children, covering everything from elementary school to university. Third, the implementation of safe, supervised children's spaces in all our hotels for the children of our night shift employees." The room erupted in murmurs. Ricardo Vasconcelos looked like he was choking. "Ethan, this will seriously impact our bottom line. The shareholders will understand that we are investing in our greatest asset, the people who make this company run," Ethan replied, with a firmness that allowed no argument. "And if they don't understand, I'm prepared to buy out their shares. I have enough saved up." The meeting continued for another 2 hours, with Ethan detailing every aspect of the proposed changes. By the end, most of the executives still looked stunned, but some were beginning to grasp the vision behind this transformation. "One last thing," Ethan said before concluding. "I want you to identify all employees with school-age children, especially those with children who show academic talent but lack the resources to develop their potential. I want individualized reports on each of them by the end of the week." Leaving the room, Ethan felt strangely light. It was as if an invisible weight he had carried for years had been partially lifted from his shoulders. For the first time since building his empire, he felt he was using his power for something truly meaningful. The next morning, he was in his office reviewing the first drafts of the scholarship program when Sarah entered, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Hayes, there's a situation in the lobby." "What kind of situation?" "Maria Garcia is here, the housekeeper from the Beverly Hills Hotel. She seems quite upset and insists on speaking with you." Ethan felt a pit in his stomach. What could have happened? Send her in immediately. Moments later, Maria entered his office. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying, and she was clutching an envelope. "Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry to come without an appointment, but I need to understand what's happening," she said, her voice trembling. "I received this morning." She held out the envelope. Ethan already knew what it was. The official letter offering Juliana a full scholarship to the Westwood Preparatory Academy, the most prestigious school in Los Angeles. "It's a scholarship for your daughter, Maria," he explained calmly. "The Westwood Academy is—" "I know what the Westwood Academy is," she interrupted, a mix of confusion and suspicion in her eyes. "It's where children of people like you go, not the children of housekeepers." "Why my daughter? Why us?" The direct question caught Ethan off guard. How could he explain that he had been moved by the words of a child selling flowers at a traffic light? How could he say that Juliana's honesty and wisdom had done more to change his perspective than years of empty luxury? "We are implementing a new scholarship program for employees' children," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "Juliana was the first to be selected because of her excellent grades and academic potential." Maria didn't seem convinced. "But how did you know about her grades? How did you know she was a good student? And why did you come to speak to me personally at the hotel that night?" The questions were too precise, Maria's eyes too intelligent to accept evasions. Ethan realized he couldn't hide the truth for long. "I met Juliana a few days ago," he finally admitted. "She was selling flowers at a traffic light on Sunset Boulevard." Maria's face went pale. "Oh my God. She promised me she had stopped doing that. I forbid her. I told her it was dangerous, but she insists she wants to help with expenses." "Maria, your daughter was doing nothing wrong," Ethan said quickly. "In fact, she's the one who made me realize many things I had been ignoring. The way she spoke about you, about your work. It made me question the kind of company I had built." For the first time, Maria seemed to truly look at Ethan, not as the powerful hotel owner, but as an ordinary man. "You bought flowers from her?" "Yes, and she gave me the correct change, even when I offered to let her keep all the—" "Honey." A small smile of pride appeared on Maria's face. "That's my jewels. I always tell her that honesty is more important than money." "You've raised her very well," Ethan said sincerely, "and I want to ensure she has every opportunity to achieve her dream of becoming a doctor." Maria still seemed hesitant, torn between suspicion and the possibility of a better future for her daughter. "I'm not used to getting handouts, Mr. Hayes. I've always worked hard for everything I have, however little it is." "This isn't a handout, Maria," Ethan replied, understanding the pride of the woman before him. "It's an investment in the future, and it's not just for Juliana. We are restructuring the entire salary and benefits policy of the company. You will receive a significant raise starting next month, as will all employees in your pay grade." Maria's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back with dignity. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why now, after all these years?" Ethan looked out the window at the city stretching to the horizon. "Because someone told me that flowers look prettier when you take good care of them." And she made me realize that the same is true for people. Maria stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "It was Juliana who said that, wasn't it?" "That sounds just like her." Ethan nodded. There was no longer any reason to hide it. "Your daughter has a wisdom that many adults, myself included, have never achieved, Maria. She deserves every opportunity we can give her." After Maria left, promising to talk to Juliana about the scholarship, Ethan remained in his office, contemplating the transformation that was just beginning. A week ago, his biggest concern was expanding his hotel empire and increasing his personal fortune. Now he felt engaged in something much larger, using his power and resources to make a real difference in people's lives. He picked up the phone and called Sarah. "Schedule a meeting with the architects for this afternoon. I want to discuss the immediate implementation of the children's spaces in all the hotels and prepare a press release about the changes in our salary policy. We're going public with it tomorrow." The seeds of change had been planted, and Ethan could hardly wait to see the flowers that would bloom. The news about the changes at Hayes Grand Hotels spread quickly through the market. Reactions were mixed. Some analysts praised the company's social and sustainable vision, predicting long-term positive impacts on the brand's image. Others, more traditional, warned of risks to cash flow and potential shareholder discontent over the expected reduction in dividends. Ethan was in his office, analyzing the initial repercussions when his phone rang. It was Gregory Vance, his largest partner and a longtime friend. "What the hell are you doing, Ethan?" Greg snapped as soon as he answered. "I just saw the press release about the salary hike in this scholarship program. Have you lost your mind?" Ethan took a deep breath. He knew he would face resistance, especially from Greg, known for his relentlessly capitalist worldview. "I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago. Greg, investing in the people who build our company every day." "Investing?" Greg let out a dry laugh. "You're burning money. That 30% raise will cost millions a year, not to mention the scholarships, the childcare spaces. You've turned a business into a charity." "It's not charity, it's justice," Ethan countered, surprised by his own conviction. "Our employees deserve to share in the success they help create." The heated argument continued for nearly half an hour. Greg threatened to sell his shares, file lawsuits, and even start a campaign to remove Ethan from the presidency. But the man on the other end of the line was no longer the same Ethan Hayes who would be intimidated by threats to his empire. "Do what you think is best, Greg," he said finally, with a calm that surprised even himself. "If you want to sell your shares, I'll buy them myself. But these changes are happening with or without your support." Hanging up, Ethan felt strangely energized. The confrontation with Greg had only strengthened his resolve. He knew he was on the right path, even if it was a thorny one. In the following weeks, as the restructuring plans moved forward, Ethan developed a habit of regularly visiting the Beverly Hills Hotel during the night shift. Gradually, he got to know each of the employees by name, listening to their stories, understanding their challenges. The distance that once separated him from those people began to dissolve. On one of these visits, he found Maria in the third-floor hallway. She seemed lighter, less exhausted since the pay raise had taken effect. "Good evening, Maria. How's Juliana? Has she adjusted to the new school?" The housekeeper's face lit up. "She loves it, Mr. Hayes. She was a little intimidated at first, you know. All those kids from wealthy families. But she's always been determined. After the first week, she was already raising her hand to answer all the teachers' questions." Ethan smiled, picturing little Juliana defying expectations in a classroom full of privileged children. "That doesn't surprise me one bit. She's extraordinary." "Mr. Hayes," Maria hesitated as if searching for the right words. She asked if she could thank you in person. "For the scholarship." "I told her you're probably very busy, but I would love to see her," Ethan interrupted promptly. "In fact, I have an invitation. We're opening the first children's space here at the Beverly Hills Hotel next week. I would like you and Juliana to be the guests of honor." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "You've really changed, haven't you?" she said, with a frankness that was only possible now that their relationship had evolved beyond a simple employer-employee bond. Ethan reflected for a moment. "Let's just say someone helped me see what was always right in front of my eyes, but I refused to look at." On the morning of the children's space inauguration, Ethan was as nervous as he rarely was before major corporate events. The space, named the Flower Garden, had been designed with the utmost care: comfortable beds, a study area with computers, a library, toys, and qualified professionals to supervise the children while their parents worked. When Juliana arrived hand in hand with Maria, Ethan felt an inexplicable tightness in his chest. The girl was wearing the Westwood Preparatory Academy uniform, a navy blue pleated skirt, white blouse, knee-high socks, and seemed even smaller in the formal attire. But her gaze was the same, intense, sharp, full of a wisdom that defied her age. "Hello, Mr. Hayes," she greeted him, extending her hand with a formality that made her seem like a little adult. "Thank you very much for the scholarship. I'm studying very hard to deserve this opportunity." Ethan shook the small hand, moved by the child's maturity. "I'm sure you are, Juliana. And please call me Ethan. My mother said I shouldn't call adults by their first name," she replied seriously. "It's disrespectful." Ethan exchanged an amused look with Maria, who shrugged as if to say, "I told you so." "Your mother is right, Juliana. Respect is very important. But sometimes between friends we can make exceptions, and I would very much like to be your friend." Juliana seemed to consider the proposal with great seriousness. "All right," she finally agreed, "but only when my mom isn't looking." The three of them laughed, and the initial tension dissipated. Ethan showed Juliana the space, which she inspected with curiosity. Her eyes lit up, especially at the sight of the library. "Can I read any of these books?" she asked, amazed by the number of volumes on the colorful shelves. "Of course you can. In fact, we chose several of them with you in mind." While Juliana explored the books, Ethan and Maria watched her in silence. "She's never had so many books available to her," Maria commented, her voice thick with emotion. "At her public school, the library was small and we couldn't afford to buy many books. They were too expensive. Now she'll have all the books she wants," Ethan assured her. "And when she finishes these, we'll buy more." The opening ceremony was simple but meaningful. Ethan insisted that Juliana cut the ribbon, symbolizing that the space existed because of her, even if only he and Maria knew it. After the event, when the guests had left, Ethan found Juliana sitting alone at one of the study tables, absorbed in a science book. "Did you like the space?" he asked, sitting down next to her. Juliana looked up from her book. "It's beautiful. All the kids are going to love coming here while their moms work." Ethan smiled. "You know, Juliana, I need to thank you." "Thank me?" She seemed genuinely surprised. "For what?" "Because you taught me something very important when we met at that traffic light." Juliana closed her book, giving Ethan her full attention. "What did I teach you?" "I was just selling flowers. You reminded me that everyone has dignity, regardless of the job they do or the money they have. When you talked about your mother about the tired flowers, that touched me deeply." The girl smiled, understanding. "My mom always says we should treat everyone with respect, from the janitor to the president. Every job is important." "Your mother is a very wise woman," Ethan agreed. "And you've inherited that wisdom from her. Do you really think I can be a doctor someday?" Juliana asked, a sudden insecurity revealing the child behind the precocious maturity. "I have absolutely no doubt," Ethan replied with conviction. "You are intelligent, determined, and you have a huge heart. You will be an extraordinary doctor." Juliana's eyes sparkled. "I'm going to take care of people who don't have money to pay for expensive doctors, and I'm going to take care of my mom too. She works so hard that her back hurts sometimes, but she never complains." Ethan felt that strange emotion in his chest again, a mixture of admiration, tenderness, and a vague regret for all the years he had ignored people like Maria and Juliana. "Your heart is like a garden full of beautiful flowers, Juliana. Never let anyone cause them to wither." The girl nodded solemnly as if she had been given an important mission. "Flowers only wither when they don't get water and sun. People are the same. They need love and opportunities to grow strong." Ethan fell silent, once again amazed by the wisdom of this child. It was as if Juliana, in her simplicity, had discovered truths that had taken him 45 years to begin to understand. At that moment, as he watched Juliana return to her science book, Ethan knew for certain that the changes he had initiated were only the beginning. The flower garden was just the first bud to bloom in a garden he intended to cultivate for a very long time. Despite the opposition from Greg and other shareholders, despite the pessimistic forecasts of financial analysts, Ethan knew he was on the right path, because he now understood that success wasn't measured just by numbers on a balance sheet, but by the positive impact one could have on people's lives. And that he owed to a little flower girl who had the courage to speak the truth to a powerful man at a random traffic light in Los Angeles. 6 months had passed since the changes were implemented at Hayes Grand Hotels. The immediate financial impact was exactly as the more conservative analysts had predicted, a 22% drop in quarterly profits and a significant reduction in dividends distributed to shareholders. What no one expected, however, was what happened next. The cultural transformation within the company was remarkable. The absenteeism rate plummeted. Employee turnover, always a chronic problem in the hospitality industry, was cut by more than half. The quality of service improved noticeably, reflected in guest reviews, and surprisingly, hotel occupancy rates increased, driven by a wave of positive publicity about the company's social policies. Ethan was in his office, analyzing the numbers from the second quarter after the changes, when Sarah entered with a worried expression. "Mr. Hayes, Gregory Vance is here, without an appointment. And he's brought lawyers," Ethan sighed. In recent weeks, Greg had intensified his campaign against the company's new policies. He had rallied other minority shareholders and threatened to take the matter to the board of directors, alleging mismanagement and irresponsible use of corporate assets. "Send them in." "Sarah." Greg stormed in, followed by two men in dark suits carrying bulky briefcases. His face, usually tanned from the golf course, was even redder, indicating his mood. "You've gone too far, Ethan," he shot without any greeting. "First the pay raises, then the scholarships. Now this business of building daycares in the hotels. You are deliberately destroying the value of this company." Ethan remained calm, gesturing for the visitors to sit. "Good morning to you too. Greg, if you give me a few minutes, I can show you numbers that indicate the opposite of what you're saying." "Numbers?" Greg let out a bitter laugh. "I have the numbers right here." He slapped the briefcase one of the lawyers was holding. A 22% drop in profits, reduced dividends, operating costs up by 18%. And for what? To feel good about yourself. To appear in magazines as the good guy CEO. Ethan took a deep breath. He had expected this reaction, but it was still difficult to deal with the hostility from a man he had considered a friend for so many years. "We're looking at different horizons. Greg, you're fixated on the last quarter. I'm thinking about the next several years. And if you look beyond the numbers you brought, you'll see we're already reaping the first rewards. Lower turnover, better guest reviews, an increase in occupancy rates." "Nonsense!" Greg interrupted, slamming his hand on the table. "You've jeopardized all of our investments because of a social conscience attack. And to make matters worse, you didn't even consult the other shareholders." One of the lawyers cleared his throat, taking the floor with a calculatedly professional voice. "Mr. Hayes, we represent a group of minority shareholders led by Mr. Vance. We are here to formally notify you that a motion will be presented to the board of directors questioning the legality of your recent decisions and demanding their immediate reversal, under penalty of a legal request for intervention in the company's management." Ethan took the documents handed to him, calmly leafing through them. The threat was serious. If the board voted against him, he could lose effective control of the company he had built. "I understand your concerns, gentlemen," he said finally, placing the documents on the table. "But I ask you to consider a few more factors before proceeding with this action." Ethan turned on the large monitor on the wall and presented a series of charts and projections prepared by his financial team. "As you can see, the initial drop in profits is already reversing. Productivity has increased by 25% in the last 3 months. We now have a waiting list of qualified professionals wanting to work for us, which allows us to select the best. Our positive media presence has grown by 300%, generating an estimated millions in earned media. And guest loyalty has increased significantly." The lawyers exchanged glances, clearly impressed with the data, but Greg seemed immune to any argument. "Manipulated data," he exclaimed. "And even if it's true, it doesn't justify the risk you took without consulting the shareholders first." Ethan sighed. "Greg, how long have we been friends?" 15 years. You've seen me take risky decisions before. In fact, you always admired my audacity in business. That was different. You took risks to maximize profits, not to hand out our money for social projects. And what if I told you I'm doing exactly that? Maximizing long-term profits, building a brand that people admire and respect, creating a loyal and productive workforce. Isn't that what we've always aimed for? The discussion continued for over an hour. The lawyers, realizing that Ethan's numbers were consistent, began to suggest to Greg that it might be prudent to wait a few more months before proceeding. But the partner was adamant. "This isn't just about numbers, Ethan," he said finally, revealing his true concern. "It's about the precedent you're setting. Today it's Hayes Hotels. Tomorrow every company will be pressured to follow your example. You're changing the rules of the game." Ethan smiled, finally understanding. "And that scares you so much that other companies might follow our example? That they might discover that treating employees well can be good for business?" Greg adjusted his tie, visibly uncomfortable. "You were always an idealist disguised as a businessman, Ethan. That's how we got here. But now you've crossed a line, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect my investment and the industry as a whole." After Greg and the lawyers left, Ethan remained in his office, contemplating the approaching storm. The battle in the boardroom would be fierce. He might even lose control of the company. But surprisingly, that possibility didn't frighten him as it would have a few months ago. His phone rang. It was Sarah. "Mr. Hayes, Maria Garcia is online too. It sounds urgent." Ethan answered immediately, concerned. "Maria? Is something wrong?" Maria's voice was choked with emotion, as if she had been crying. "Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry to bother you, but Juliana really wants to talk to you. She's right here next to me. Can I put her on?" Intrigued and still worried, Ethan agreed. Juliana's familiar childish voice came through the line. "Mr. Ethan, I have something important to tell you." The excitement in the girl's voice made Ethan smile, momentarily forgetting his problems. "What is it, Juliana?" "I won first place at the school science fair. I did a project on how plants grow in different conditions, like those flowers I used to sell, remember? The teacher said she's never seen such a good presentation from a new student." The pride in Juliana's voice was contagious, and Ethan felt a wave of genuine joy. "That's wonderful, Juliana. Congratulations. I always knew you were brilliant. The principal said my project is going to represent the school at the state science fair. And do you know what I said when they asked me where I learned so much about flowers?" "What did you say?" "I said I learned by selling flowers at traffic lights to help my mum. I said that's where I realized that some flowers grow strong even in tough conditions, just like some people." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. "That's very profound, Juliana. And you know what else? I said I met an important person who helped me understand that we all deserve a chance to grow strong, like well-cared-for flowers." The simplicity and depth of Juliana's words struck Ethan like a bolt of lightning in the midst of the storm he was facing. At that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that, regardless of the outcome of the battle with Greg and the other shareholders, he had chosen the right path. "Juliana, you are incredible," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so proud of you. Thank you for believing in me, Mr. Ethan. My mom said you used to be different, more serious and distant. She said you changed. Is that true?" Ethan reflected on the sincere question. "Yes, Juliana, I did change. Or rather, someone helped me find a part of myself that had been lost for a long time." After hanging up, Ethan stood for a long time looking out the window, contemplating the city. The conversation with Juliana had dispelled his doubts and renewed his determination. The storm Greg was bringing might be strong, but he now knew it was worth facing. He called Sarah and began preparing his strategy for the board meeting. Regardless of the outcome, Ethan Hayes would not turn back. He had found a greater purpose for his life and his business, and that was worth more than all the profits in the world. That night, before sleeping, he looked again at the daisies on his nightstand. They remained firm and vibrant, a silent reminder that, even in the harshest conditions, beauty and strength can flourish when given the proper care. The main auditorium at the Hayes Hotel's headquarters was packed for the decisive board meeting. On one side, Ethan and his supporters. On the other, Greg and the group of shareholders dissatisfied with the changes. The tension in the air was palpable. The chairman of the board, Carlos Drummond, a respected 70-year-old businessman who had long followed Ethan's career, took the floor. "We are here to evaluate the formal challenge presented by shareholder Gregory Vance and others, who question the recent administrative decisions made by CEO Ethan Hayes, alleging that such measures compromise the financial health of the company and the interests of the shareholders." Greg spoke first, presenting charts and projections that highlighted the immediate financial losses resulting from the new policies. His arguments were technically correct, but focused exclusively on short-term results. When it was Ethan's turn, he surprised everyone. Instead of counterattacking with numbers and statistics, he asked for permission to bring some people into the auditorium. Before I present my formal defense, I would like the board to meet some of the employees who have been directly impacted by the changes we've implemented. With the reluctant permission of the chairman, the doors opened and about 20 employees entered, housekeepers, cooks, receptionists, bellhops, all wearing their Hayes Hotels uniforms. Among them was Maria, holding the hand of Juliana, who was dressed in her impeccable school uniform. "These are some of the faces behind the numbers we are discussing," Ethan began. "People who dedicate their lives to making our hotels run perfectly. People whose hard work was rarely properly recognized." One by one, the employees briefly introduced themselves and shared how the changes had impacted their lives. A cook mentioned he could finally afford medication for his elderly mother's treatment. A receptionist reported that for the first time, she could pay for a technical course to specialize. A bellhop shared with a choked voice that his son with learning difficulties was now receiving special support thanks to the Educational Assistance Program. When it was Maria's turn, she stepped forward timidly, still holding Juliana's hand. "My name is Maria Garcia. I've worked as a housekeeper at the Beverly Hills Hotel for over 3 years. I'm a single mother, and I've always struggled to give my daughter the best. Before the changes Mr. Hayes implemented, I worked the night shift and had to leave my daughter with neighbors, or sometimes even sneak her into the hotel. Today, thanks to the children's space created at the hotel, she can be safe while I work. And thanks to the scholarship program, Juliana is studying at one of the best schools in Los Angeles." Maria paused, visibly emotional, then continued, "But that's not all. With the raise we received, I no longer have to work 2 jobs. I have time to be with my daughter, to help with her studies. And for the first time, I was able to rent a small but decent apartment outside of my old neighborhood." These changes weren't just about money. They were about dignity and opportunity. The auditorium was completely silent. Even Greg's allies seemed touched by the testimonies. It was then that little Juliana stepped forward, looking directly at the board with those intense eyes that had so impressed Ethan at their first meeting. "Can I speak too?" she asked with surprising confidence. The chairman, visibly moved, nodded. "My name is Juliana and I'm 8 years old. Before I met Mr. Ethan, I sold flowers at traffic lights after school to help my mom. One day he stopped his car and I offered him daisies. He said he didn't want withered flowers and that I should be in school. I told him the flowers weren't withered, just tired, like my mom when she came home from work." Ethan watched the faces of the board members. Some looked away, visibly uncomfortable. Others listened with genuine attention. "I don't know much about business and money," Juliana continued with the devastating simplicity of a child. "But I know that when we take good care of flowers, they become more beautiful and live longer. My teacher at my new school explained that this is called an investment. You give water, sun and fertilizer, and in return the plant grows strong and beautiful." Juliana looked directly at Greg, who seemed unable to hold the girl's gaze. "My mum says Mr. Ethan is doing that, investing in people so they can grow strong and beautiful too. At the science fair, I learned that plants that are cared for produce more beautiful flowers for a longer time. Isn't it better to have many beautiful flowers for a long time than to pick them all at once and have none left later?" The silence that followed was broken by the chairman, who cleared his throat to disguise his emotion. "Thank you, Juliana. You've given us a lesson in management that isn't taught in the best business schools." After the employees left, Ethan formally presented his defense, now based on numbers and projections showing the ongoing recovery of financial indicators and the positive outlook for the near future. "Gentlemen, what we are doing is not just socially responsible, it is economically sustainable. We are building a company that not only generates profits, but creates real value for everyone involved: employees, customers, shareholders, and the community." The vote was close, but in the end, the board decided by 7 votes to 5 to maintain the policies implemented by Ethan, on the condition that the results continue to be monitored quarterly. Greg, defeated but still unconvinced, approached Ethan after the meeting. You won this battle with a low blow, using that child to manipulate the board's emotions. But don't think it's over. Ethan looked at his former friend with a mixture of sadness and understanding. It wasn't a low blow, Greg. It was a lesson. The same one I received from that girl a few months ago. And if you were open to listening to her, maybe you could learn something too. I don't need lessons from a ghetto kid or a businessman who decided to play Robin Hood with other people's money. Greg snapped, storming away. Ethan watched him go with regret but no remorse. He knew he had chosen the right path, even if it meant losing old alliances. 3 years passed since that decisive meeting. Against all pessimistic predictions, Hayes Hotels not only recovered its financial health, but expanded its operations to 3 more states. The business model that prioritized employee well-being and social responsibility became a benchmark in the industry, and Ethan was frequently invited to share his experience at business conferences. The Flower Garden program, initially implemented only in the chain's hotels, evolved into an independent foundation that offered educational and vocational support to the children of hospitality industry workers across the country. Thousands of children had benefited, and the first group of scholarship recipients was already preparing for college. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, Ethan drove his car, now a more modest model, to a city park where the 3rd anniversary celebration of the Flower Garden Foundation was taking place. Upon arrival, he was greeted by dozens of smiling children and their parents, many of them hotel employees. In the center of the lawn, a simple stage had been set up. Ethan went up to give his speech, but before he could begin, he was surprised by Juliana, now 11, who approached him with a bouquet of daisies. "These are for you," she said, handing him the flowers, picked especially for the occasion. Ethan accepted the bouquet, deeply moved. "They're beautiful, Juliana." "Not withered at all," he joked, referencing their first encounter. "That's because they received the right care," she replied with a smile that now showed braces on her teeth. "Just like all the kids here." At the microphone, Ethan briefly shared the story that had changed his life and the lives of so many others. 3 years ago, a little flower girl taught me a lesson that all the business schools in the world had failed to teach, that true value isn't in the dividends we distribute to shareholders, but in the lives we touch and positively transform. That a company is not just a profit-making machine, but a living organism that can and should contribute to a better world. Looking at the audience, Ethan saw faces of all kinds, his hotel employees, scholarship children, teachers, and even some shareholders who had initially resisted the changes, but now recognized their value. The Flower Garden Foundation was born from a chance encounter at a Los Angeles traffic light. It was born because a child had the courage to speak the truth to an adult who had forgotten how to see the world clearly. And today, we celebrate not just 3 years of work, but the living proof that business can be conducted with humanity and still thrive. After the event, while helping to clear the tables and chairs with other volunteers, Ethan saw Maria talking to an elegant woman who looked vaguely familiar. "Ethan, do you remember my ex-wife, Catherine?" a voice said from behind him. Ethan turned, surprised to see Greg, whom he hadn't seen in nearly 2 years, since he had sold his shares and completely distanced himself from the company. "Greg? I didn't expect to see you here." His former partner looked different, more relaxed without his former aggressive posture. "Catherine has been a volunteer with the foundation for 6 months. She insisted I come today," he explained with an embarrassed smile. "I think she wanted to show me what you were really doing." The 2 men walked side by side, watching the children play in the park. "You were right, Ethan," Greg finally admitted. "I was so focused on the numbers I couldn't see the bigger picture. What you've built here, it's extraordinary." "I didn't build it," Ethan gently corrected. "All these people did, working together. I just created the space for it to happen." Greg watched the children for a moment, then asked, "Which one is the famous Juliana? The flower girl?" Ethan pointed to the girl who was now helping younger children with a painting activity. "Does she still want to be a doctor?" "More than ever. And I have no doubt she'll make it." Greg nodded thoughtfully. "You know, I'm considering investing in the company again. Not for the money, but, well, let's just say I want to be part of something meaningful for the first time in my life." Ethan smiled, extending his hand to his old friend. "You're welcome back." There's always room for more flowers in our garden. That evening, driving home, Ethan stopped at the same traffic light where it all began. For a moment, he could almost see the little Juliana from 3 years ago offering her tired daisies. That chance encounter had triggered a transformation that went far beyond a company or a foundation. It had transformed hearts, starting with his own. Ethan looked at the bouquet of daisies on the passenger seat. The same simple flowers he had once considered unworthy of his attention. Now they represented everything most precious in his life. The ability to see beauty where others saw only insignificance, to recognize value where others saw only cost. The light turned green, and Ethan drove forward, not just in the Los Angeles traffic, but on the journey that had begun in that very spot, when a child taught him that tired flowers are still beautiful and can brighten someone's day, just as people, when given an opportunity, can flourish and transform the world around them. YouTube outro script. Narrator, we hope the story of Ethan and Juliana has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotion and reflection, we've prepared a special playlist with equally inspiring stories. You can find it by clicking the link on your left. If you enjoyed this story about how small encounters can transform lives, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the complexities of life and the power of human connection. Share in the comments if a chance encounter has ever changed the course of your life, or if a child has ever taught you a valuable lesson. We're eager to read your stories and continue this conversation. Until next time, with more stories that warm the heart and make us believe in a better world.